Well, the time is just gone, 16 minutes past 8, as we kick off this morning, taking a look at the state of governance in South Africa pre-2024 elections. We are joined by political analyst, Professor Sipho Seepe. Professor Sipho, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Yes, South Africa, in fact, we're just about a year or so before we head to 2024 elections, and it's important to look at where we are from a governance perspective. And we know that many political parties are eyeing the 2024 elections. That is going to take a lot of their time and a lot of their energy and their efforts looking ahead at the elections. But the country still needs to run. The country still needs to be governed. And while all of this is in play, just to understand the current state of governance in the country, Prof.
Well, first of all, one should indicate that if you were to search South African media space and you were to put the word failed state, you'll find a lot of commentary that suggests that we are on the brink of a failed state. And because many institutions that are supposed to be functioning are either dysfunctional or functioning at a very suboptimal levels. And you expect the police to be on top of the game, they are not. You expect the intelligence services to be on top of the game, they're not. You expect the parliament, whose role is to ensure that there's good governance and there's a proper oversight in terms of the issues of the integrity of the system. It is almost dysfunctional. I mean, as people say, the rot starts at the top. You have a president who is mired in a lot of controversy, including suggestions that he may have turned a blind eye to serious crimes of kidnapping, torture, but he's also somebody who may have violated some of our laws, including the fact that you have a president who has hidden a lot of dollars, millions of dollars, in mattresses. You'd expect that somebody who is also portrayed as a business person will understand that we have something called a bank. And then you have a party that has a majority that talks about the issues of integrity, transparency, scrutiny, and accountability, and saying this person should be above scrutiny. But if that's not enough, you also have structures that have been given space in the Constitution, the importance of the civil society. We used to have organizations that talk about saying that the right to know. Suddenly, when it comes to the president, these right to know groupings seem to be saying citizens do not have a right to know. They are no longer as active as they've been in the past. You see the foundationals not doing anything about it, being quiet. So what you see is also a collusion that is monumental, that is institutional in the country. So if it can happen from the highest office, that the highest office can be shielded from scrutiny, as both the former president Thabo Mbeki says, and then recently this week it was Dr. Matthews Posa saying the same, that it cannot be right. So if it collapses like that, then you should know that it will percolate downwards. So what you now see at the municipal level is a manifestation of almost an unwritten instruction that it is okay to turn a blind eye to what appears to be failure to govern properly. You look at the Auditor General's reports. In terms of municipalities, you find that the only ones that seem to have done better are those that run for the DA. or run by the DA. But where you go to the municipalities that are run by the ANC, there you have a total collapse. So these are the reports that we get year in, year out. And yet you have a president who can stand up there and still talk about we are dealing with it. And when he's challenged also on the issue of electricity, which actually is almost a manifestation of failure, of the ANC failure and government failure, is that the president goes to court and says it is not his responsibility to provide electricity. Then suddenly it's corrected. But what is significant about that submission by the president, even though he retracts on it, because he's the president who always retracts on his statement, is simply a president who never accepts responsibility for anything. And when issues were raised around the Pala matter, he decided to hide behind what is called due process. But what we should know is that had Arthur Fraser not told us about this, something that took 3 years ago, we would not have known. So Mr. Transparency had kept the story and the truth with himself. Even as we speak today, we do not know anything because the ANC used the majority to insult South Africans that there is some information that you should not know, that we can talk about accountability, but it doesn't apply to us. So when you talk about state of governance, we talk about systems that are in place, but that are functioning. The systems are there, rules of the game are there, processes are there, but you do not have people who are implementing and making sure that they are executed. So that, in a nutshell, is the state of governance in South Africa. And it expresses itself in a number of failures. One, the major one, is load shedding, which is also now beginning to take lots of lives. Second is almost every town is almost filled with, you have potholes, even in places that you do not expect. It's almost like the towns and cities are outshining each other at how many potholes they can have. And if you cannot even fix that, the roads, you are also sending a message. Then you have the collapsing infrastructure. So we are in a West state, and we have a president who goes about. And some people even suggest that this is a person who appears to no longer be interested. Now go to Parliament. This week it was reported that the president and cabinet ministers had failed to answer questions that had long been sent to them. So you can see the total collapse of accountability in our system.
Prof, it's a scary thought that people like yourself who have been watching and monitoring the situation for a very, very long time, making a statement that this country is a failed state. And these warning signs have been there. There's been warning after warning about South Africa getting to a situation where it is going to be described as a failed state. And looking at a year before the elections and looking at the electorate in South Africa, looking at the voters. And this is what voters need to do. And I'm sure you will concur that there is some serious introspection that needs to be done on the part of the voters to understand truly what all the issues that you are talking about, and to the detriment of the country from an accountability perspective, from a governance perspective, and the ineffectiveness of the president himself and a number of the senior political figureheads in the country to address these problems, or just total failure on their part, or a lack of interest in addressing these issues. As far as the electorate is concerned, what should we be thinking about?
Well, I think there's been a shift in terms of the electorate, their perception of the ANC. That's why the ANC is now beginning to talk about coalitions. But before one gets there, one must also indicate that, unfortunately, we also have a sense where we have not addressed the racial nature of our politics. Some people keep on saying that people vote for the ANC because most of those people are uneducated. But we also know that the whites in this country have always voted white, despite the claims of education. They've always voted for apartheid, despite the claims of their education, even when apartheid was declared a crime against humanity. So we must actually deal with, remove that notion of saying that people vote because black people vote because the ANC because they are uneducated. That's rubbish. Ordinary people, you do not need education to know when something is wrong. Ordinary people knew that the apartheid was wrong, and yet the so-called those who had the better education continue to support a fire system because they could associate their interest fire system. So this has nothing to do with education. It has to do with whether people see an organization serving their interests. But the fact that the ANC now talks about coalition, it begins to see that the voters are beginning to see that their interest no longer lies with this party that has a glorious history of liberation. That this party has been captured to serve the interest of a few, the microwave, the billionaires who have never started any business, and yet they're paraded but these are co-opted to colonial and apartheid architecture that puts black people and the majority of these people out of their economy and out of the land. That's why today black people still remain landless. But they're beginning to see that. And what we now see with the ANC is now even that discussion of the coalition is geared to wanting them to remain in power. They start coming up with some nonsense that says the party that has the highest number must be the one that almost is given a chance to set up government. As if, and they call it the will of the people, when actually, as soon as you have 51%, it doesn't matter how you got that 51%, that still represents the will of the people. But the ANC, because it has seemed to be a party that is concerned about the people, it is concerned about only being in government. It is concerned about making sure that its cadres have access to the resources of the state. So that is becoming much clearer. And it becomes very important for people to look at this proposal of the ANC because they have nothing to do with solidarity, they have nothing to do with democracy, they have more to do with we exist to be in power so that we can continue to access and to pillage the resources of the state.
Well, Prof, thank you very much for that, and always a pleasure engaging with you on these matters. And unfortunately, time constraints, and I'm sure there's just so much more that you can unpack on what we are talking about. But as time goes by, I'm sure we will be linking up with you to get your analysis and your reading into the situation. But for now, we thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best, sir. That's Professor Sipho Seepe with us this morning. And when we come back, we'll be joined by the organization Undoing Tax Abuse. We will be talking with Advocate Stephanie Fick.